For over 1,000 years, Rome forged an empire of unparalleled power, law, and innovation. From grand aqueducts to legislative assemblies, its legacy shaped the very foundations of the Western world. But beneath the marble and the majesty pulsed a heart of uncompromising, often terrifying justice. A justice rooted in a simple, unyielding philosophy. Dura lex, sed lex. The law is harsh, but it is the law. In the Roman world, crime was not just an offense against an individual, it was an affront to the gods, to the state, and to the very fabric of Roman society. Punishment, therefore, was not merely about retribution or rehabilitation. It was a brutal public spectacle designed to instill terror, maintain order, and assert the absolute authority of the empire. Today, we descend into the grim annals of history to uncover 10 of the most gruesome and dehumanizing methods Rome employed to uphold its ironclad rule. These are the punishments that reveal the true, unforgiving face of Roman justice. Imagine the roaring crowd, the sun beating down on the vast amphitheater, and the smell of blood mixing with the dust. This was the stage for damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts, a punishment often reserved for slaves, criminals, and famously early Christians who refused to worship the Roman gods. The condemned were stripped, sometimes armed with a flimsy dagger, sometimes entirely defenseless, and pushed into the arena. There they would face lions, tigers, bears, or leopards, deliberately starved to heighten their ferocity. The slow, agonizing demise was a macabre form of public entertainment, a chilling reminder that in Rome, human life, especially that of a criminal, held little value against the spectacle of power. Perhaps the most bizarre and uniquely terrifying sentence was poena culae, the punishment of the sack. This was reserved for the gravest of all familial crimes, parricide, the murder of one's own father. For the Romans, this wasn't just murder, it was an act against the very gods and the foundation of the Roman family unit. The condemned was sewn into a large leather sack, but they were not alone. Inside, a macabre collection of living creatures joined them: a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey. The sack was then hurled into a river or the sea. The victim would be forced to endure the frenzied attacks of the animals within the confined space, clawed and bitten before succumbing to a slow, suffocating drowning. It was a calculated horror, ensuring a death that was both agonizing and utterly debasing. Death in Rome wasn't always the end of the public's judgment. For high treason and crimes against the state, the Gemonian Stairs became the final humiliating resting place. Located near the Roman Forum, these steps were infamous as a site of execution and post-mortem defilement. After strangulation or other forms of execution, the bodies of the condemned were dragged by hooks and left exposed on the Gemonian Stairs for days. Here they were subjected to the mockery, curses, and physical abuse of the Roman mob, a public display of the state's absolute power and the utter contempt for its enemies. Finally, the mutilated remains were unceremoniously dumped into the Tiber River. It was a punishment designed not just to kill, but to utterly obliterate one's dignity and memory. Perhaps the most iconic and horrifying Roman punishment, known even today, is crucifixion. While the Persians and Greeks used it, Rome perfected it into an excruciatingly slow and public form of execution, primarily reserved for slaves, pirates, and rebels, anyone deemed unworthy of a Roman citizen's death. The condemned would be nailed or tied to a large wooden cross, often paraded through the streets first to maximize public humiliation. Nailed through the wrists and feet, the victim would hang, slowly suffocating as their diaphragms struggled to draw breath. Death could take days, exacerbated by exposure, thirst and the relentless torment of insects. It was a prolonged agony, a public spectacle meant to deter any thoughts of rebellion, etching the image of suffering into the minds of all who witnessed it. Not all Roman punishments involved immediate execution. For some, especially infants or unwanted children, the sentence was expositio, exposure. This was a form of passive murder, but a brutal one nonetheless, reflecting the harsh realities of ancient life. Unwanted newborns, children with deformities, or those whose families simply couldn't afford them were often abandoned in remote locations, left to the elements, starvation, or wild animals. While legally not considered murder, the intent was clear. This practice highlights a colder, less sentimental side of Roman society, where practicality and survival often superseded compassion, even for the most innocent among them. When the empire faced rebellion or enemy forces, its retribution could be swift, brutal, and utterly comprehensive. Internetio was not a legal sentence for an individual, but a mass punishment, a systematic annihilation of prisoners of war or rebellious populations. Following major victories, particularly against perceived threats to Roman dominance, entire enemy armies or cities could face internetio. This meant the wholesale slaughter of men, women, and children, often to set a terrifying example. The complete eradication of a rebellious city, its people enslaved or put to the sword, served as a stark warning across the empire: defy Rome and face total obliteration. It was a terrifying display of military might and unbridled vengeance. While not always involving immediate death, servitus poeni, or penal servitude, was a punishment that often amounted to a slow, agonizing demise. Criminals, especially those who committed serious crimes, faced a life sentence in the harshest conditions imaginable. Sentenced to labor in the notoriously brutal Roman mines, like those of Spain or Sardinia, or chained to the oars of a galley ship, these individuals toiled without hope. In the mines, men worked in darkness, breathing toxic fumes, often without enough food or water, their bodies breaking under relentless strain. On the galleys, they faced the lash of the overseer, disease, and the constant threat of drowning. It was a living death sentence, a testament to Rome's capacity for sustained, systematic human suffering. Before formal legal codes became universally standardized, early Roman law, particularly reflected in the 12 Tables, embodied the principle of lex talionis, the law of retaliation, or an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. While seemingly straightforward, its application could be chillingly literal. If a free man broke another's limb, his own limb could be legally broken in return. If you failed to repay a debt, the earliest Roman laws allowed your creditors to literally carve pieces from your body proportional to the debt owed. While later laws became more nuanced, this fundamental, brutal tit-for-tat reveals a primal ferocity in Rome's early approach to justice, where the penalty mirrored the injury, often in the most gruesome possible way. And finally, perhaps the most psychologically terrifying of all Roman punishments, particularly for those deemed sacred, live burial. While not common, it was reserved for specific heinous crimes, such as the Vestal virgins who broke their vow of chastity. For a Vestal virgin, whose purity was believed to protect Rome, breaking her vow was an act of sacrilege, punishable by burial alive. She would be led to an underground chamber, often near the Colline Gate, provided with a small amount of bread and water, and then sealed inside. The official narrative was that the state avoided shedding sacred blood, but the reality was a slow, agonizing death by starvation, thirst, and suffocating darkness. It was a living death sentence, a testament to Rome's capacity for sustained, systematic human suffering. These methods were not arbitrary acts of sadism. They were deeply woven into the fabric of Roman governance. The empire was vast, diverse, and constantly on the brink of internal strife and external threats.
Such extreme punishments served multiple crucial functions. Firstly, deterrence. Public, brutal executions were a powerful warning to potential criminals and rebels. The sheer spectacle of suffering was meant to instill fear so profound that few would dare to challenge the state. Secondly, order. In a society with a vast slave population and frequent foreign wars, maintaining absolute control was paramount. Justice, however brutal, was a tool of statecraft, ensuring stability and suppressing dissent. And finally, power. These displays of unforgiving retribution reinforced the absolute authority of the emperor and the state. They demonstrated that Roman law was unwavering, its reach inescapable, and its vengeance total. In a world without modern policing or mass communication, public pain was the most effective way to communicate absolute power. The brutal legacy of Roman justice, while shocking to our modern sensibilities, undeniably laid some of the groundwork for Western legal systems. Concepts of codified law, evidence, and public trials, they all have roots in Rome. But it also serves as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty in the name of order. As we reflect on these dark chapters, we're forced to ask, how far have we truly come, and at what cost was the Roman world built? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the brutal heart of Roman justice. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Stic Stories for more historical deep dives, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration.